Hello everybody, this is Mr. Rob and welcome back to another episode of the Washington Commanders franchise here on Madden NFL 24. It's been a little bit, but today's a big one because we're going to go through the first portion of the offseason, free agency, and figure out who is on the move around the league, who will be the newest Washington Commanders. If you're excited for this one, make sure you drop a like and you subscribe down below, especially if you want more franchise content. Now, before we get into the offseason, a couple things to wrap up the year. First off, we're going to find out who wins Super Bowl 60. It was the Tampa Bay Bucks versus Cincinnati Bengals, and your Super Bowl champion is the Cincinnati Bengals. The fourth time is the charm. They beat the Bucks 23-21. Joe Burrow gets your MVP. So Cincinnati is now the team to beat. You can see the awards on the right side. Jonathan Allen gets Defensive Player of the Year for 2 seasons in a row. Now, before we get into the rest of the year, we got to figure out some of the coaches. Now, we fired our defensive coordinator. Eric Bieniemy is still going to be head coach, but we are going to hire Leslie Frazier, that should be, as our DC. He has some time with Bieniemy in Minnesota. Now, as far as the coaches around the league, there's 7 new coaches. First off, in Chicago, Matt Nagy is gone after a 1-year reunion. They hired Todd Monken, the Ravens offensive coordinator for the past 3 years, who has some head coaching experience. He coached 3 years at Southern Miss University in college. The Browns, they hired Gus Bradley, the Colts defensive coordinator, after 2 years with Mike Tomlin. He was the Jaguars head coach from 2013 to 2016, where he went a abysmal 14-48, but the Colts are one of the surprise teams this year. Cleveland's hoping that Gus Bradley, in his second stint as a head coach, could do a lot better than the first. They also own the number 1 pick. Up next, the Cardinals, they hired Ken Dorsey, the Bills offensive coordinator, to be their head coach. Jonathan Gannon has been fired out there in Arizona, trying to find some stability with Kyler Murray. And Ken Dorsey, who has a lot of history with Josh Allen, also has a history of slamming some laptops. But nonetheless, he gets his first chance in Arizona. In the next one, the Dolphins, they fired Mike McDaniel. They hired Brian Callahan, the offensive coordinator of the Bengals, who just won the Super Bowl. We know Miami has a high-powered offense, and they get one of the best young offensive minds in the league to coach Miami to see if they can turn around what was an abysmal season for the Dolphins. Tua Tagovailoa trying to unlock that next potential. They think Brian Callahan could be the guy. Up next, the Green Bay Packers. They have fired Matt LaFleur, and they bring in Luke Getsy to be their head coach. He has been the Bears offensive coordinator of the division rivals, and he also has a lot of history with Green Bay. He was on their coaching staff for 7 years before he took the Chicago offensive coordinator position. So he's back in Green Bay, and he's the man at the helm. Next up, we have the Carolina Panthers. They fired Steve Wilkes after 2 seasons. They hired Dave Ragone, another in-division hire, as he is being the offensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons, helping develop Desmond Ridder into a starting quarterback for them. They're hoping he can come over to Carolina and do the same thing with Bryce Young, who just threw over 20 interceptions in his sophomore campaign. And then finally, the Titans, they bring in Jim Bob Cooter, probably the most sought-after guy this coaching cycle. He was the Colts offensive coordinator. Anthony Richardson had a heck of a season. He really turned the corner. He put the Colts all the way to the 2 seed. A lot of people wanted him, but Cooter goes to the Titans, a Tennessee native, graduated from Tennessee Volunteers. He is back home with the Titans to be their new head coach. So exciting time there. Now we look at the retirements around the league, and there's a couple of big ones. Austin Ryder, Marcus Meg, Fletcher Cox at the top. We lose 2. We lose Allen Robinson, and we lose our starting left guard, Andrew Norwell. So 2 guys retire for the Commanders. Also, Kirk Cousins has called it a career after 14 seasons. A couple of other names, Shaq Barrett, DeAndre Hopkins, Adam Thielen. You can see the list on your screen. Teron Armstead, Von Miller. But we now got to replace our slot wide receiver and our starting left guard in free agency. As Levante David, you could also see him retiring. Here's a look at the mock draft. I thought this was interesting before we get into free agency. The Browns have the number 1 pick. Arch Manning is by far and away the best prospect, but they don't have them selecting quarterback. They have Arch Manning down at the 5th pick to Tennessee, and then us taking a defensive end. If the Browns aren't going to take a number 1 pick with the quarterback, maybe they trade back that selection, just a development to watch. Now we get into our re-signings, where we have a couple of big names and only $26 million in cap space. We tied up a lot of our money into our big hitters like Jonathan Allen and Terry McLaurin during the season, and it hasn't left us a lot of money in the bank. The first guy is Devin Singletary, who was acquired last year from the Baltimore Ravens at the trade deadline. He's been sensational. He's got up to superstar dev, and I don't really want him to walk. So we're going to offer him a 3-year, $20.5 million contract, and he accepts. So Singletary is the halfback for the next little bit. Next up is Emmanuel Forbes. He has a 5th-year option, not a contract, and we're not going to accept it. I don't want to pay him $17 million, and, well, he'll be on the team for at least another year. That brings up Jahan Dotson, one of the more curious cases, because he's a star dev wide receiver. He's got a lot of potential, but he's never hit it. Always in the 500 yards, so we're not going to give him anything big. We're going to give him a 3-year contract, and he declines the contract. So Jahan Dotson will not be in Washington next season. We're not even going to think about the franchise tag, so he will test free agency. Arguably the biggest one left for me, Yamin Davis. He has been an anchor for our defense, over 100 and almost 50 tackles the past couple of seasons. Really stepped up all-around game this past year, in my opinion. I don't want to let him walk, but I can't give him big money. We don't have a lot of cap space, and we have a lot of holes on this team. So we're going to give him a 4-year, $34 million contract, which I think is fair. It's very player-friendly, and he chooses not to sign it. He'd rather test free agency. We could put the tag on it for $17.8 million. We could afford it. But like I said, I feel like this team has some holes now, specifically on the offensive line. And I can't tie it up to Yamin Davis. So he will test free agency. But he is our top priority to bring back during that period. Other than that, so we have a lot of role players who we're going to let all of them test. I have no interest in bringing back a lot of these guys. You know, there's some good ones there. Michael Butler was benched, but he was a depth corner. Kaliki Hudson, Ridgeway. We do offer Damon Cox a 1-year contract because he was a return man, and he doesn't accept it. He'd rather test. So not sure why, but we'll probably just bring him back in the preseason if he's still available. Kareem Hunt has regressed. He is gone. He was a nice power back. Jacoby Brissett, the second stint in Washington, is over. We're looking for a new backup quarterback. And everybody else is also not going to be brought back. Chaz Surratt, Steve Morton, Jake Fromm. I do have a little bit of interest in bringing back maybe in a preseason battle. He did look pretty good in his short stint. Mo Cox, that was kind of a bust. He's regressed. He is not coming back. And our starting right tackle, Andrew Wiley, will not be brought back. So we're guaranteed 2 new starting linemen, which is one of our top priorities. Keep Michael Penix Jr. healthy. Also starting punter Ryan Stonehouse. So here's a look at our roster going into free agency. As like I said, there's a few holes. We're now missing another wide receiver. We lost 2 with Dotson not coming back. We need a new left guard. Norwell retired. I'd like an upgrade from Daniels at right guard, but now that's just not a priority. We have a lot of other needs. We have a lot of holes, and we don't have a lot of cap space. So it's going to be a tricky offseason. Obviously, Yamin Davis, our corners, Snead and Fuller also regressed. So how do we handle all these? Well, we got to look at the free agents to see how we handle it all. Here's a look at the free agency class. Ronnie Stanley Thompson. As you can see, there is 3 offensive linemen at the top. I wish I could afford these players because there are some good ones available. Javarius Ward, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson, Tyler Lockett. A couple of good receivers if you're interested in one, which we could be. But like I said, top priority has got to be Yamin Davis. And I'm going to put the 4-year, $34 million contract back on the table. He's got a lot of offers. He's got 5 in particular. So it's not going to be easy. But I didn't want to go up to a 5-year deal. I didn't think we could afford it. So 4 years, $34 million is what the offer is to Davis. Jack Conklin would have been a great right tackle, but unfortunately, you can't afford him. Even at the friendly, because he wants to come here, we still can't afford Jack Conklin. So that's going to be a big miss. Instead, we're going to try to go after Rob Havenstein, who, 34 years old, is not a bad blocker. He just struggles a little bit with the pass block finesse, but I think he could be a good stopgap 1-year player at the right tackle spot. We're going to give him a 1-year, $6.7 million contract. Another guy we'd love to bring in is Joe Thuney, a superstar left guard who has some experience with Bieniemy in Kansas City, but unfortunately, like the theme this offseason, we can't afford him. It's also not looking like we're going to get Yamin Davis. He is leaning towards Arizona, so that is a big blow, but we got to start thinking backup. So we're thinking now Alex Anzalone, a 31-year-old who is kind of like a light version of Davis, in my opinion. Not as fast, not as good at coverage, but a lot of the same type of player. So we're going to give him a 1-year, $2 million contract, kind of the same thing, just to be a stopgap guy at right outside linebacker while we reevaluate that position. We go through the first eval period, and yes, indeed, Yamin Davis is an Arizona Cardinal. So one of our best defensive players has left. That's going to be a big hole to fix. We do get Rob Havenstein and Alex Anzalone. They do both accept. So we do get his backup, and we do get a new right tackle. Now to left guard, the guy with the most interest for us is going to be Elijah Wilkinson, who's not really a starting caliber left guard, but there's not a lot of good ones left on the table that we can afford. So we're going to give him a 1-year, $2.2 million contract, and he will accept. So we have our new lineman going into year 4. We also signed a punter, Logan Aldrich, the Texas Southern alum. He will be our new punter instead of Stonehouse. Here's a look at how free agency ended. It was a quiet period for us, but there were some big names. Stanley stays in division, but he goes to the Steelers. Joe Thuney is now a Carolina Panther on a 1-year contract. Jordan Mailata to the Chicago Bears on a 3-year deal. Chris Olave stays in division, but he goes to the Tampa Bay Bucks on a 4-year contract. Him and Mike Evans are now the top 2 in Tampa Bay. Garrett Wilson to the Titans. Tyler Lockett stays in Arizona, and Grady Jarrett also goes to Chicago. So after our free agency period, here's a look at the team, and a lot of people will say, we got worse. That's just what happens when you don't have the money, and you tie it up in a lot of these superstar players like Jonathan Allen and Terry McLaurin. Remember, got the big 6-year extension, and Montez Sweat and Chase Young also went down a depth trade, so they're both star dev. So even though we're not paying a quarterback, we're paying a lot of other players. So it's going to be interesting to see how year 4 goes for this team. We still have playoff aspirations. It's going to be a do-or-die year for Eric Bieniemy and this team. You can take a look at our draft picks on the screen as well. We have our pick in every round: 2 and 3, 2 and 4, 3 and 5, 2 and 6, and 3 and 7. So a lot of day 3 picks. And that'll be in the next episode. We will have the 2025 NFL draft and get 2026, NFL draft. And get into the year. But I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. I know we didn't make a lot of big splashes, but let me know in the comment section below, what do you thought of our free agency period? Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed, make sure you drop that like and you subscribe down below, especially if you want more franchise content. This is Mr. Rob, and I'll see you in the next one.